In the Chapter 1 tutorial on page 10, it says, in ActivityQuiz.xml, make the changes shown in listing 1.2. So let's open ActivityQuiz.xml. It's here on the left. It is in the list. Double-click it to open. And it says to use the tab at the bottom to open the XML. And here we see the ActivityQuiz.xml code. But it does not match listing 1.2. Listing 1.2 looks a lot more like this fragment quiz file right there. So in order for this program to work as it says it will in the book, we need to make some changes. And these changes are because the way that Eclipse operates and the way that Android programs are provided by default have changed since the printing of the textbook. So there's this website that I've linked on my teacher website to a Stack Overflow question that says, for those who would like instructions on how to remove fragments from the project, do these things. Now, one thing to note is that when it talks about fragment main, because we called it fragment quiz, and because we called it quiz activity instead of main activity, those will be a little different. But it says copy all the contents of the res layout fragment quiz.xml. So we're going to res layout fragment quiz.xml, and it says to copy all of that. So you can just do edit, copy. And then it says open activity quiz.xml. Delete the frame layout. And paste the copied contents. So there we've copied the stuff from fragment quiz to activityquiz.xml. It then says delete fragment main.xml. We delete files over here on the left. You can right click on it with 2 fingers on the Mac trackpad and choose delete, and it says, here are the things that will happen if you delete. Go ahead and say OK. So we have done steps 1 and 2. In activity main.java, now activity main is quiz activity.java. It says delete the whole placeholder fragment class. So it starts like this and it ends with a curly brace, and let's go find it. It starts like this and it ends with a curly brace. Now you have to be careful here to not delete all of it, but only the parts suggested. So the part starts with these stars and it ends with 2 curly braces. 1, 2. So we delete up through those 2 curly braces, leaving this bottom curly brace because that makes our program close. And then delete the following lines from onCreate. So when it says the name of a method, you are looking in here for the name of the method, and you can find this usually tied with these bubbles. So there's our onCreate, and it says to delete this part of it, starting with if, going down through a curly brace. So if, going down through a curly brace, we just take that bit out, throw it away, and it says at this point you should be all set to run the project. Anything up here with a star by it means it hasn't been saved, so you can do Command S to save these things, or as soon as you try to run the project, it will go. Now you need to have an emulator already open and connected and working in order for this to test, and you would do that by using the Android Virtual Device Manager under Window. But we'll talk about that later. So let's just try to run this thing. If you hit the play button, it might ask you a question, but you always want to run it as an Android application. And in the bottom right here, we'll see what's going on. Hit our play button. There it goes. Launching GeoQuiz. Bring up our emulator here. And there's our hello world. Now we will proceed on to take out the parts that it tells us to take out and replace it with the parts that we're going to put in to make this app a quiz. Here you can see that I've typed in all of the code from the listing, and now I'm going to go ahead and add my strings into the strings.xml file, which is under the resources. So let's save this file. Let's save them all and go back and look at the activity and see what the preview looks like. Now here I'm looking at listing 1.6 on page 18. We have a couple of more additions to make in the buttons. And then we're looking at listing 1.8, which is the quiz activity Java. And we are updating this to include a couple of private members. Notice that we have errors here. Command-Shift-O will import the code we need in order to make these buttons work right. And continuing on to page 20, we're going to add the code to access those buttons. On page 21, it's going to show us how to set our listeners, which means have code which reacts when the button is pressed. We're going to add some more text to our strings XML, which is right up here at the top. And finally, you're going to make some changes in listing 1.13 on page 24, which will tie this all together. So let's run it and see what happens.